What makes this so amazing is the last time you and I spoke, I want to say we were in a kitchen in Irvine. There was no Facebook. I mean there was the internet, but I don't think that there was even like there was none of this existed. What is that like for you? Because I am like, yeah, it's a very odd feeling.
Yeah, it's so incredible. The level of communication that's capable nowadays. But then again, you're still amazed at like the difficulty people have communicating. Um, I was going to say, I think actually, Evan, I think didn't we speak at Chain Reaction in 2009?
Was that okay? You know what?
We
For the
probably ran
hardcore
into each other.
reunion. For that hardcore
Yeah,
reunion. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
And weren't all the Haywire guys there? And it would be because you were there, Billy was there, wasn't Vadim there? No, but Rick wasn't there.
Rick, yeah, we met for dinner previously, and then Rick had another engagement, so he didn't go to the actual show.
Gotcha. What I think is so interesting about that show is I heard someone doing an interview for that show, and I bring this up just because I'm a big boxing fan. And they were talking about it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it was for some fighter," and they weren't like denigrating the fighter or anything. But I was sitting there thinking like, "Oh, but this was like this great fighter. He fought Floyd Mayweather. He fought Oscar De La Hoya. Blah blah blah. All had all these great fights at the Forum in the '90s." Anyway, I you bringing that up, you're right. So that was the last time. So then, at that point, we had flip phones. I mean, the iPhone wasn't in everybody's hand, nor was like a phone like no, not everybody had a phone like
Smart.
this.
Yeah.
Um, um, I'm just so happy to be talking to you. I was talking to little Steve, and I was like, hey, we were just doing the interview, and then he had mentioned how he spoke to you and blah 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 blah, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to interview him, and then he emailed me and said, yeah, I spoke to him. He wants to do the interview, so I was like, okay, let's do it. So I've spoken to Rick. I've spoken to Billy. Now I'm speaking to you. I got to get Vadim, and I will have the whole the fearsome foursome that made up Haywire. Um, what I was going to say now is we'll start with like the typical question: how did you get into hardcore? Because I also know that you're doing music now that isn't quote hardcore, but I know that that was always music that you were interested in. But how did getting into hardcore punk? How did that happen for you? And where were you living? What area?
Okay, so it's kind of a two-part history. So I remember I must have been 10 or 11, and I remember watching the news, and the news is they're having stories, and they're like, the most talked about band from England, the Sex Pistols, have hit the States. And they're showing like footage, and they show footage of the crowd, and everybody in the crowd is just like, moving their head and kind of their shoulders and just like, and I was like looking at it, and I was like, I like that, like what? Oh my gosh,
You immediately felt that kinship to
just,
that audience.
just like excited about it, and because, like being older, kind of during the 70s, it just seemed like you would go, if you could find one, you would go to a record store, and then like all the album covers would be like a picture of like somebody with an acoustic guitar sitting in a field up against a tree or something, and you're just like, it's not even a clear photograph, like there's got to be something else out there. And so anyway, I'm attracted to that, and I think probably the first time I kind of heard hardcore, I remember, I was a K-Rock listener, and they had a contest in conjunction with the Adolescents and their song Amoeba. And they were like, okay, everybody draw your best amoeba and mail it in and we'll pick a winner. And they just kept playing the song Amoeba. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is, amazing.
And so that song was on K-Rock?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And K-Rock actually had quite a adventurous program manager and playlist. And there was a time where you could hear quite a few things that were very, very unique. I remember hearing like Black Flag once or twice, on there too. And then you would listen to the Rodney on the Rock show, and he introduced you to all the new music from like the surrounding areas, and then some of the bigger like scenes. And, and he had, a couple, punk rock things in there every show, along with his usual, other stuff, garage, girl group, psychedelic type stuff that he did. So that was like a big avenue to actually find out about other bands. And then, I kind of, I did like, I didn't have an older brother who was into it. And I didn't necessarily have transportation to the coolest record stores. So I was kind of stranded until...
Where were you living at this point?
I was living in Santa Ana.
Okay.
And, eventually by the time I'm like in high school, I found out about Music Market in Costa Mesa, and you go there and the place was like bigger than your school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they had everything. And so right there, that was a big eye opener and a big, another like avenue to get more exposure to the music. So kept doing that, kept, collecting, records and cassettes and trying to find out about, new stuff. And just kind of picking things up along the way, kind of almost like the classics, and then I would say probably too, one of my biggest turning points with it would be becoming friends with Gavin. Because, Gavin had his finger on the pulse.
And did you guys just meet at shows? Like, was it just two showgoers happened to start talking?
Just kind of like hanging out at South Coast Plaza. And wow, there's a punk guy. And, I'm kind of a punk guy. And we just kind of struck up a conversation. And, and he had like a really cool, like, leather jacket with a big, like, Minor Threat flyer painted on the back, just amazing and stunning. And you're just like, wow, and I kind of heard of Minor Threat. And I think I heard like one or two songs or something on a radio show. It was the Maximum Rock and Roll radio show broadcast by KUCI. So one time they had like an episode and they focused on the DC area. And, you heard all this music and you're just like, that's not like what's going on here. And oh my gosh, and so him and I kind of struck up a conversation about it. And he completely, like, it just exposed me to all this great music that he had known about for years already, and this is like 1983, and like Minor Threat hadn't repressed their 2 7-inches, so the only thing out there was like the two 7-inches, and nobody had it, and they weren't really well known. Some people knew about him, obviously, but like he had all that stuff, and he would make me tapes and then just check this out, and check this out. And so he was like, probably one of the biggest exposures that I had to what was really going on at the time.
And then did that also fix your transportation problem? Because he had a car. Like, could you
Yeah.
guys?
Oh yeah, he always had an access to a vehicle, and he would just come pick me up, and we would do shows, and I started going to shows, and that definitely kicked it up a notch because it was live music, and it's like, yeah, you hear it on a record, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's nice, and oh yeah, that's exciting. And then you see it live, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I have to see more of this. I have to find out more about it. I have to go see this band next week.
What was your first show?
First show was in November of 1983. I think it was like November 17th or something like that. It was at the Cafe de Grand. We, Gavin, myself, and a couple other friends who had a car decided, like, yeah, we're going to go up to the cafe and see MIA. And Gavin was friends with MIA. He, would speak with the bass player, and this was as they were starting to get ready to record Murder in a Foreign Place. And he also, right around that time, or, it was decided that he would do the artwork for the album cover. So he had a really close connection to them. And we drove up to the cafe, had one of those, very cinematic movie. We're driving down the wrong street. We're lost. Everybody has to use the bathroom. There is no bathroom. Pull over. Is that a cop? Oh my gosh, And we eventually make it there, and it was the only time I ever went to the cafe, and it was so crazy, and not crazy, but just again, just kind of mind blowing. And I don't know if you ever remember, but in Flipside, they would talk about the cafe and the problems that they were having with the neighbors, and this organization doesn't like it, and it got so bad because nobody would pay money to go inside. And it got so bad that the cafe had to rent like a parking lot, or I think it was a parking lot across the street, so everybody could go hang out there and not attract police attention. And I remember standing in line and looking over and just seeing this parking lot full of people, and then going to the show, going downstairs, seeing a few bands. I remember that night because Don Bowles was the DJ, and he played this band. He was really into this band called 3 Days Stubble. And in the 90s, I saw 3 Days Stubble, and he was the drummer for them by that time. So that was kind of neat. It was just exciting. Like, hey, wow, there's that guy you've heard about, and he's right there across the room. And and MIA were great. They were incredible, and they were such a good band, and they were also very important in more of my access to hardcore. Just go see MIA, and whoever else is there is probably good too.